Of all the German cities to find yourself in during the hottest heatwave on record, Stuttgart is most probably the worst, and that's because of its geography. That same geography is also responsible for two slightly unusual features of Stuttgart's public transport system, which, since I happen to be in the area anyway, I thought I'd like to take a look at. But first, we have to understand Stuttgart itself. It is the state capital of Baden-Württemberg, home to 600,000 people and the centre of a metropolitan area with a population of nearly 3 million. But it doesn't have a particularly good reputation among Germans, and there are at least two reasons for that. The first is pretty obvious at first sight to anyone who knows their 20th century history. Take the City Hall, which features this statue of Stuttgardia, the personification of the city. It was made in 1905, and the woman who modelled for it was a certain Elsa Weil. But she was Jewish, and so when the Nazis came to power, she fled to the US. In 1944, the City Hall as it was then was destroyed in the war that the Nazis had provoked. Stuttgardia was saved, but the City Hall was completely rebuilt in what was at the time a thoroughly modern style. This is a very apt metaphor. About 2/3 of the buildings in Stuttgart were destroyed in 53 air raids, and it chose to rebuild itself as a modern city. There are some historic buildings left. This is the old Schloss, and next to it is the new Schloss, which will be visible once they finish dismantling the seating for the jazz festival I just missed. But for the most part, the architecture tends to range from controversial to just uninspired. The second reason for Stuttgart's poor reputation is its problems with air pollution, which in turn are caused by the geography. This is a major city built in a narrow valley and surrounded by steep hills. And this means that it's sheltered from the wind, meaning that heat and pollution can easily become trapped in the city. That same geography creates huge problems when it comes to moving people around the city. For both cars and the railways, this has meant lots of viaducts and tunnels, and that in an official earthquake zone. The earthquakes themselves are very mild, but still, this just adds to the engineering challenges. Even in the city centre, flights of steps are a common sight, and wheelchair users are confronted with steep ramps and circuitous routes. In a previous video, I complained of urban planners building elevated highways just because they could, but in Stuttgart, this eyesore was pretty much unavoidable. On the face of it, Stuttgart looks like a typical 20th century car-centric city, with wide highways for stupidly large numbers of cars. But now that you understand the geography, you'll also understand that the city has very little choice here. Through traffic has to be funneled straight through the centre, because there's nowhere else for it to go. A strategically placed road tunnel ensures that at least the historic and shopping districts remain pedestrian-friendly. But in fact, all is not as it seems, and I promise you that we are now slowly getting to the point. While many cities were busy getting rid of their trams to give more space to cars, Stuttgart decided to modernise and transform its tram system. It would, where possible, be separated from road traffic, with parts of it moved underground. The transformation took a few decades to complete, but Stuttgart now has a Stadtbahn system, a kind of light rail that acts like a metro system in the central district and a tram system in the outer districts. Incidentally, contrary to what Wikipedia says, citing a newspaper article that gives no evidence to back up its claim, the U does not stand for the German word for independent. It's just the logo used everywhere in Germany for both U-Bahn and Stadtbahn systems. The fact that there are many places where the Stadtbahn shares the road with cars and is therefore not fully independent should be a clue. Thanks to Stuttgart's hilly terrain, the vehicles used for the Stadtbahn have to be made specially to take the very steep gradients. They are unique to this city. But this isn't actually one of the special features that I wanted to show you. Let me take you instead to one of the outlying districts up in the hills to the south of the central district. This is Stuttgart's Rack Railway, affectionately known as the Zacke. It covers a distance of 2 kilometers, climbing 210 meters with a gradient of up to 17.8%. That's too much, even for the Stadtbahn. The track has a rack with teeth which engage with a cog on the vehicles themselves, either pulling them up or helping to control their descent. It was first opened in 1884 to bring workers from the villages up on the Fulda Plateau down into the Stuttgart Valley and back, as well as bringing goods to market and building materials to the city. In fact, it was the owner of a brickworks in Degerloch who collaborated with an engineer to build it. It still runs today, and although it isn't the only rack railway in Germany, it is the only one that can be used with a standard public transport ticket. Officially, it is a tram, and it runs as Line 10. It also has a special attachment to take bicycles, but only uphill and only if you get on at the first stop and get off at the last. The Zacke, although now modernised, is an attraction in its own right, but is also an important part of the public transport system. In fact, at the top end it was extended as recently as 1994 to meet the Stadtbahn at Degerloch station. However, it is quite noisy and it runs through a residential area, so it only runs until 9 PM, after which it is replaced by minibuses. But even the Zacke isn't the highlight of this video, because I've left what I consider to be the best to last. Not far away is the thing that I was most excited about seeing, Line 20, the Stuttgart cable car. Although it looks older, it was actually first opened in 1929 to take residents of Heslach to the local cemeteries. For this reason, it was soon nicknamed the Legacy Hunter Express. It was one of the first semi-automatic funicular railways ever built. This did away with the need for operators in the stations, and the whole system could be operated by one guard in each car. Both guards have to operate a switch to close the circuit to set the cars in motion, guaranteeing that they will start moving at exactly the same time. In 2003, new EU regulations almost meant the end of the Stuttgart cable car, but thankfully a way was found to bring it up to modern standards while still preserving its absolutely gorgeous historical character. Originally, power for the lights and heating was provided by an overhead electric cable, but now this is done by batteries which are recharged at the stations. The cable has been kept though, although it now serves a different purpose. It detects fallen trees and branches. A seemingly now abandoned flower shop built into the top station is a reminder of the cable car's original purpose, and in fact, people still do use it to visit the cemeteries. But it's also used by walkers to take them up to the hiking trails in the woods, and of course, enthusiasts of unusual and historic railways. Both the cable car and the rack railway are part of Stuttgart's public transport system, and so you only need a standard local public transport ticket to use them. They're also both very clearly marked on the standard public transport map, making it even easier to plan your trip. Unfortunately, the rack railway is not wheelchair accessible. The cable car is just about, but you will need help. And that just about wraps it up. Thank you for watching, and if you'd like to see what may be Germany's ugliest city, I've added a link to a video that you might be interested in.